Hello to all and welcome back to Should You Get. I'm Brother Templar and for today's video we're going to be looking at the P-39Q-5. One of the only aircraft in the game that, despite my 750 hours odd of experience, is still one of the aircraft that genuinely strikes fear into my heart when I see it coming for me. Coming in at a Tier 2 battle rating 3.3, this is easily one of the most feared aircrafts when it gets down-tiered. But enough about that for now, and let's have a look at this aircraft in a bit more detail. In February 1937, the United States Army Air Corps and the Air Corps Tactical School issued a specification for a new fighter with the new Circular Proposal X609 request. This request was for a single-engine, high-altitude interceptor having the tactical mission of interception and attack of hostile aircraft at high altitude. This specification calls for at least 1,000 pounds of heavy armament, including a cannon, a liquid-cooled Allison engine with a General Electric turbocharged tricycle landing gear, a level airspeed of at least 360 miles an hour at altitude, and a climb to 20,000 foot within 6 minutes. This was undoubtedly the hardest specification ever presented by the United States Army Air Corps, and although Bell's limited fighter design work had previously resulted in the Bell YFM-1 Airacuda, which was largely considered quite a failure of an aircraft, the proposal adopted an equally original configuration with an Allison V12 engine mounted in the middle of the fuselage, just behind the cockpit, and a propeller driven by a shaft passing beneath the pilot's feet under the cockpit floor. The main reason was to add the 37mm Oldsmobile T9 cannon to fire through the center of the propeller hub for the maximum amount of accuracy and stability when firing. Now, the T9 had a very limited ammunition supply, a low rate of fire, and was prone to jamming. However, when it did actually work and was put on target, it was found to be absolutely devastating. This test model was known as the XP-39 and made its maiden flight on the 6th of April 1938. And this test flight started off quite positive, as it was capable of achieving 390 miles an hour at 20,000 foot, and being capable of reaching said altitude in only 5 minutes. However, its test flight quickly went sour when it was found to have very ineffective performance at altitude, which for an interceptor is quite a bad thing. Because of this, the aircraft was ordered to be sent to England, where it would be evaluated by the NACA, or National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics. Tests were carried out, and it was concluded by the NACA that they could increase the maximum speed of the aircraft by 16% if they were to reduce the parasitic drag. These were suggestions that Bell took on and accepted fully, by doing everything that was recommended. In the end, the production P-39 was ordered to be made without a turbocharger. Now, no one's entirely sure why this was chosen in the end, but it's most likely either due to trying to save cost, or because that engineers were saying that the aircraft's insides were clustered enough as it was, and it didn't need anything else trying to be added to it. 12 YP-39s, which is the variant with only a single stage and single speed supercharger in it, were ordered for service evaluation. After testing was complete, it was concluded that one of the external radiators was to be taken off the design. However, the production P-39 retained its single-stage, single-speed supercharger with a critical altitude of only 12,000 foot. As a result of this, the aircraft was simply not made for medium to high altitude interceptions, and could only really be used effectively under 12,000 foot. Furthermore, due to the aircraft not having a turbocharger, it was nearly impossible to improve the Aerocobra's performance in flight, making it basically as good as it was ever going to be. The Aerocobra was first introduced to the military in 1941 and was produced from 1940 to May 1944. Overall, 9,588 were ever built. In 1940, the British was looking at the combat design of the aircraft and eventually ordered 675 on the 13th of April 1940. Now, the variant they were received had two 50 calibers in the nose, 4 7.7s in the wings, and one 37 in the nose. However, this nose was changed to the 20mm Hispano Suiza cannon. Overall, the British didn't particularly like the design, as it was comparatively worse than the Hawker Hurricane and Supermarine Spitfires in performance, and, of course, couldn't get to the altitudes that the Hurricane or Spitfire could, or at least struggled very heavily when it did get to them. Not only this, but also it was found to be slower than said aircraft, as well as having many problems with the design, such as the cockpit roof not being able to be jettisoned, and the lack of clear vision panels on the windscreen meant that in the case of heavy rain, the pilot was essentially blind. But easily the most exported to country was the USSR, with a total of 4,719 P-39s sent. Now, similar to the British, once they received these designs, they immediately took out the 4 7.7 Browning machine guns. The reason being because it was to improve the overall performance of the aircraft, but most importantly would mean that it had a much better roll rate. Overall, the Soviets quite liked the design, as most battles on the Eastern Front were fought at low altitude, where of course the P-39 was at its best. Not only this, but it was also found to be quite effective at taking out hostile Stukas, twin-engine bombers, and was even capable of keeping up with early to mid-war Messerschmitt Bf-109s in some areas of performance. But anyway, on to the aircraft in question in War Thunder, and you'll notice when you look at its performance that it is absolutely average. Like, it has a very, very average performance for a 3.3 battle rating aircraft. You're looking at 20 seconds turn time, which isn't, any kind of turn fighter, but at the same time, you will still be able to outturn some fighters in the game. And with a rate of climb of 17.2 meters per second, once again, you're not a climbing aircraft per se. A lot of aircraft will still beat you to altitude, but once again, you are still a fairly good climber, and in comparison to other American aircraft, these stats are actually quite good. You've got one of the fastest rate of climbs and one of the fastest turn times of any Tier 2 American fighter. In fact, one of the only real stats I can see of this aircraft that's substantially better than most in a 3.3 battle rating is its max speed of 385 miles an hour once aced, which is quite fast for a 3.3, and you'll find yourself being able to not only keep up with most, if not all, aircraft you'll come up against of the same battle rating as yourself, but also you'll find that you can get away from them quite a lot of the time. However, you can't have the good without the bad, and unfortunately this aircraft doesn't have a very good roll rate. It's quite poor by most standards, and once you've got down to not even like low speeds, but to not particularly high speeds at least, then you'll find yourself suffering quite badly in roll times. And the amount of times I've died on this aircraft because I try to perform a roll to which the aircraft only performs about half of it and then sits awkwardly on a knife edge is, well, too many that I would like to count, put it that way. So I think we can all conclude that this aircraft overall has a very average flight performance and isn't really anything special and is, well, pretty well balanced for a 3.3 battle rating. So why is this aircraft so intimidating, and why are so many people afraid of it if this is the case? And well, it probably has something to do with its armament. You see, it has two different armaments, 4 50 caliber M2 Browning machine guns, and, of course, the one thing everyone knows about this aircraft is the nose-mounted 37mm M4 cannon. Now, this cannon is pretty infamous, as if you fire a high explosive round and it connects with just about any fighter in the game, it'll often kill it in 1 if not 2 shots. And if you fire it at any kind of bomber in the game, even some of the most heavy and resilient bombers in the game, it often doesn't take more than around half a dozen shots on target to absolutely rip it to shreds. In fact, on that first video I showed you, you saw this aircraft absolutely tearing apart 2 bombers and 1 light bomber, the Stuka. And yes, it's true to say that this aircraft, when it comes to taking out bombers, lives up to its expectations of history. But this aircraft's cannon needs a bit more of a looking to than you might first think, as this aircraft comes default with only high explosive rounds for the cannon, which are very powerful, mind you, and if you get it upgraded, you can change to either universal or ground attack belts. Now, I have tried using all of these belts, and I can conclude that default belts are good if you're the type of pilot who only ever goes for other fighters. The universal is good for someone who goes against fighters and bombers, you know, someone who goes for a bit of both, if you will, which is the main reason why I personally choose universals. And ground attack is for people who are absolutely batshit insane, because this aircraft sucks so bad at the ground attack. I mean, my current record for ground attack against light pillboxes is the last time I went up against one, I fired altogether 8 cannon rounds from the ground attack belts, all on target, onto the pillbox, and it still wasn't destroyed. So, yeah, this aircraft is useless against just about anything that isn't either a light tank or some kind of unarmoured force on the ground, in which case, if you do want to go for light tanks and that, I just recommend high explosive rounds anyway, as I'm pretty sure they can penetrate light tanks, although don't quote me on that, because I don't think I've actually tried this against any light tanks. But either way, just go for universals if you're unsure, because for universal belts, you get 1 armor piercing every 3 rounds, so at least 1 in 3 will destroy just about any target. Well, that is unless it's a medium tank or light pillbox, in which case, apparently nothing will destroy them from this gun. Now, for the next thing I'm going to talk about, it's going to actually be something that's happening right now on your screens, which is me landing the aircraft. For you see, this aircraft has quite an interesting landing technique, as well as abilities. You see, not only is it quite unique because it has one gear leg in the nose rather than in the tail, which is quite unique, but also you will notice these landing flaps are absolutely incredible. These are easily some of, if not the best landing flaps I've seen on any fighter on this game. They absolutely, like, these things are like air brakes, and they absolutely just go from ridiculously fast speeds to nothing in seconds. They are incredibly good. Although, in saying that, it is true to say that they do break off at around 130 miles an hour. So definitely use them, but remember that they will break off fairly easily. Going back to armament, and there's only really one other thing we can talk about. Well, other than the 50 calibers, but they're 50 calibers, you know, they're alright, it's nothing special. You know, they're okay. But what I want to talk about now is the M8 missile pods, which are something that I would say aren't worth your time. In that previous video I showed, you saw me having them, and you'll notice not only they have a very low drop-off range, but also they're not particularly powerful anyway. If you want to go ground strafing, they're not particularly powerful as it stands, and if you want to fire at bombers and that, they're quite inaccurate, so once again, they're not great. Not to mention, they do come with their own tubes, which of course you can't get rid of, so you will be dragged down the entire time, even after you fired your rockets. So all in all, the 37mm is great at taking out bombers, and, well, the rockets are just pretty pointless altogether on this aircraft, really. And, well, that's all you really need to know about this aircraft. But the real question is, does it deserve all the hype it gets? Is it truly some god of the skies with that 37mm? And it's true that that 37mm is intimidating as hell, and, you know, one shot from that and it will evaporate just about anything it comes up against. But it's not unstoppable, and this aircraft, when it gets up-tiered, is actually quite underpowered, if anything. So, in conclusion, should you get the P-39Q-5, I'd say if you enjoyed the N variant that comes before this one, this is essentially just the exact same aircraft, but slightly faster and with slightly better armament. So if you like that variant, then definitely get this one. Otherwise, you could quite happily miss it. It's nothing too special, but is a lot of fun if you get a good game in it. And one last thing I just remembered to say about this aircraft is remember to get the new 37mm as quickly as possible. It is extremely inaccurate when not upgraded and needs that upgrade as soon as possible. So, as I fly for a head-on with that I-185, because of course with this 37mm I'll pulverise him with one shot, so I fire at him, roll off, he appears to keep coming, so I go more for him, gets a lucky shot, sets me on fire, I set him back on fire because he already put it out, and I kill him for the final kill of the match. Not bad game. Not a bad game at all. And yeah, definitely don't go head on with the P-39, because if it has the upgraded cannon, it will rip you apart in one shot. So, as my body gets incinerated on the side of a hill, I say thank you very much for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe, it's always appreciated. And until next time, say thank you very much, and I'll see you then. Now, when it comes to flying the Ki-43, the amount of rounds it takes to kill a target, well, depends on how good you are. A rookie will take 200, an average player will take 100, and a professional will only take 50. But me, I only take 4.